So there's a Hulu series called The Path, which is a story of a religious movement that meets a lot of the criteria that people would have for unethical controlling organizations. Some people call them cults. It tells the story of a family, and one guy in particular, Eddie, who was not born in the organization but joined it when he was younger after his brother died. And he was looking for something to hold on to, something to believe in, and he found this organization that really helped him put his life back together to find purpose and meaning. He was able to find a young woman to marry and to start building a family. And at the beginning of this series, it really seems like he has everything together. And the group is doing a lot of good work. They have a lot of great friendships and teachings which really help them know where they are in the world and what's expected of them and where they're going. Throughout the series, in the first season in particular, Eddie starts to learn information about the group and its leaders that he didn't know previously. And he starts to see some of the darker side of their teachings. He meets an apostate, somebody who used to believe and be a part of the organization but left after learning things. And his perception about the organization starts to change. And I think the script writers, the actors, everyone involved with this show does a phenomenal job of really conveying that type of just paradigm-shifting, earth-shattering transition that happens when you depart from a faith that has really been your entire existence. There's one scene in the second season, in the second episode, that I think articulates a point that's really difficult to convey sometime. I'm going to have you watch the scene and then we'll talk briefly about it. You're going to see Eddie's now apart from his family because when you leave the organization, there's a degree of shunning that takes place. And he's met up with the old girlfriend of his brother who died. And they have a little bit of an argument. He's still coming to terms with being outside of the group. She comes to him and is trying to find information about the group because she sees that the group kind of helped him put his life back together after his brother died. And his response, I think, has a great deal of insight. So let's just take a look.
When Johnny died, I had nothing. I had no answers as to why it happened. You know, and I had nowhere to go. And you found somewhere to go. I mean, you found a place that has the answers that you need. You know, it probably saved your life.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. And who's gonna judge you for that, huh? Not me.
You know, they did save me. And it was beautiful for so long to have a story that just contained it. You know, just held it all. But it only works when you believe. Because once you pull that thread, it just turns into nothing. Right in your hands.
I thought this was so well thought out and so well placed. He basically says, you know, the group did help him through one of the darkest chapters of his life. When his brother had died, he didn't know what his own purpose was, what he was going to make of his own life, or how to get out of the drugs and the violence and everything that he was involved in at the time. He found the group and it gave him a sense of purpose. It ultimately gave him a family. It gave him stability. And all of that was something that he says saved him. But then when he started to learn about the dark aspects of the group, the parts that were hidden, the parts that weren't true, it changed his perspective. And as soon as he realized that all of the messages, all of the sayings, all the symbolism, all of everything was not based in anything that was legitimate, but was simply a fictional creation of a charismatic spiritual healer type person, then it lost its ability to provide that comfort because it was not real. And I think that a lot of people who have left the Mormon church go through a similar sort of thing. Even when you go back and you think about how you were able to understand the world around you, as long as you believe it all, as long as you all believe that it's true, then it is very helpful. You know, when you think about family members dying, if you believe Mormonism is true, then it gives you a great deal of hope and security that you'll see them again, that you'll have an eternal family. You know, I understand this myself. When I was a teenager, my father and several of my siblings died in a car wreck. And I felt like this, you know, my knowledge of the gospel and the church and the eternal plan of salvation helped me to deal with that grief better, because I believed that it was true. I believed that the person that told us about those things, Joseph Smith, and the prophets, had the authority and the divine calling and right to teach those things. Now, as I've done more studying, as I learned some of the hidden, secret, darker things of the church's past, I no longer can say that I believe that Joseph Smith taught these things by having any private, secret, divine knowledge himself. I think that what he was doing was making comforting sounding stories in a very religious mode that attracted people, because they wanted to believe the things that he was teaching. And he framed it in a way where he was given special privilege to be able to speak with authority, with things like the idea of priesthood power. And so as long as all of those things are intact, then you can believe and receive comfort from them. But as soon as you start to learn that, like, the priesthood, you know, getting the priesthood was something that didn't exist early in the church, and a few years later he went back and said, oh yeah, we got this higher priesthood back. When you start to see plagiarism in the Book of Mormon, when you see anachronisms in the Book of Mormon, when you start to see other things that Joseph Smith did which are not divine type actions, using a godly voice to command other people to start business ventures and to donate money into those business ventures, using God to threaten his rivals, the voice of God commanding him to betray his wife and marry other women without her knowledge or consent. Those are things that are very expected of charlatans. And when you start to see that side of Joseph Smith, you can no longer trust any of these things. And so all of the things that brought you comfort before disappear. And so now the brethren, people in the church, they speak to people who've left the church and they say, come back. We invite you to come back and find the peace that you once felt. And you can't, because as soon as you realize that that legitimate authority is gone, then just like Eddie says, it just disappears in your hand. You cannot go back, because the one thing that made it all work was the legitimacy that requires Joseph Smith and everything that he taught and the prophets beyond him to be real. And once you study history of the church, it's difficult to accept that. And once you make the determination that it's easier to understand the world and to understand the church and to understand Joseph Smith by acknowledging that he was probably a charlatan, then everything falls into place, and you no longer find comfort in the messages that they give. You actually find it very abrasive, because with every message about what peace they can bring you, there's also a claim that the message has on your life. Oh, well, you can find peace and happiness, but in order to do that, you have to do the things that the church expects of you, whether that's attend meetings, pay tithing, shun your gay son or daughter. All these different things go part and parcel with the positive messages of the church. So again, if you get a chance and can watch on Hulu The Path, I highly encourage it. This was just one part that stood out as I'm watching the second season, but all through the first season, there are so many excellent insights that really help you understand not only how coercive groups control people, but understand the process of the pain, the psychological trauma, the real trauma in your family that happens when you try to extract yourself from that cage of belief and try to see the wider world outside of that. Anyway, that's it.